everybody. Welcome back to the XP Guild. Thanks to these wonderful players for joining me for this session 0 of what will be our Laytong campaign. I don't know what I'm going to call it. Maybe it's just Laytong campaign and we'll go from there. This is set in my Shattered Lands world. So today, session 0, we have a couple things we're going to work on. We're going to talk about a little bit about the setting. We have questions, things like that people may want answered. Some of them I may have answers for. Some of them we may come up with answers for together, determine what fits best. As in session 0s, I'd like to kind of go over a little bit about like comfortability, expectations, things I'm looking for in the game, things that they might be wanting to see in the game, sorts of interactions, whether it's like, oh, I really love complex combat, I really love, intrigue scenes, things like that. That's a big part of what we're going to cover. We're also going to look into a ties system that Dave has kind of created years and years ago, and we've worked to refine it, made it mostly a D&D centric, but it is kind of allowed and easily used in any setting just to provide a more depth to your character, a more intricate background, and provide some tangible story ability for you as a character to call in and say, I forgot to turn down the music. Thank you for those in chat. Nest4. There we go. Is that better? I totally meant to turn it down. We'll have to deal with that for the video. So yeah, we're going to work on that. We're going to look at the ties, get a little bit of information about what people are choosing without necessarily giving away story hooks. But it's a great way for your character to be able to say, like, hey, I know a guy, and then bring that into the campaign where you already know a guy. You don't have to be like, hey, DM, would I know this guy that possibly could know this thing? You can still do that, but here it's like, no, I know a guy. This guy right here, I know him. So, that being said, let's introduce our wonderful people who are joining me to work on these characters. I have their character names from former things on the screen, but let's start with Dave, my partner in crime at the XP Guild. Say hi, tell them what you're playing.
Hey ho! Yeah, I am David L. Weaver, also known as Dave the Story Guide. I co-founder of the XP Guild, and yeah, I'm really enthusiastic because this is the first time I, as a player, get to use something that I created over 20 years ago. Always been on the DM side of that, or story guide or whatever. So yeah, to actually simplify it and go, oh, I just want this much stuff instead of going, okay, I've got to figure out this, that, and the other for everybody else. Yeah. So, but it's a lot of fun because, oh man, makes it so much easier later to like have the players go, hey, just like Bill said, hey, I've got the guy. I'm like, oh, hey, I didn't have to create that dude on the fly. So, but anyway, yeah, I am presently playing Pios. He is from a new mechanic that Bill is working on presently, known as Lodges. I am from the Badger Lodge. So he is a interesting character, to say the least. I guess that's about it for now. We'll get more into him as time passes. So I guess I'll pass it over to Brad.
Hey everyone, my name is Brad, also known as Sage the Forged. I'll be playing a Warforged monk, Way of the Astral Self, also known as Vrakos. He is a stoic Warforged who is basically assigned to a lodge called the Iron Octopus, or Way of the Iron Octopus, that specializes in the astral self and grappling martial arts. Along with his background, he was basically woken up in a ground of rubble one day in a slave encampment. Basically just picked him up and be like, hey, it's like, oh, you're weird, all kinds of rocky looking stuff, and hey, you're going to be a slave now, basically. Then eventually his master discovered him and decided to purchase him off the encampment. And, well, sorry, before I got my back mixed up a little bit. He gets anonymously hired to become a gladiator. Just to discover, once he won his freedom from the gladiator tournament, to discover his current master is the person who purchased him into the gladiator tournament. That's pretty much it for me. I'll pass it on down to David.
Hello, my name's David Mansell, also known as David, also known as the Gorokian or Old Dirty Rabbi. I am playing in this particular campaign Randolph Loams, a halfling bard of some repute. He definitely does not belong to any lodge. No siree, not this guy. He is a degenerate in the classical sense and is an absolute bloody joy to play. He's new to the whole process of being altruistic in any way, shape, or form. So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops over time. But he has met these guys now, and for whatever reasons, he is going to be a bit more in their life. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. So the other thing I was going to go over, which thank you for reminding me about the lodges, just briefly is like, what lodge are you or aren't you in, and what benefits are you getting from it? This particular region in the Shattered Lands, for those who may not know, the Shattered Lands came about 300 years in the past. There was the end of a great war against a bunch of demons that invaded the material plane and was taking over the base level. A group of powerful spellcasters launched simultaneously across the little enclaves of survivors across the world this great powerful spell that broke pieces of the land off and raised them up to become floating islands, somewhere around a mile plus into the air. Thus they're shattered, the shattering of the lands. Then those island areas kind of stayed isolated for a while because, of course, this spell also cost these spellcasters their lives, and took quite a while before the skill and the technology was back to the point where they could get to the air, create airships, join other islands, first starting off with just people who could fly like druids and things like that, reuniting some of the nearby islands, and then eventually getting to the point where they had airships and traveling between all the islands was easier. Then they broke into these enclaves or nations where various different areas came together. So this particular region is called the Lei Tong region. It was ancestrally like a half-elvish kind of land, but due to the way the shattering happened, it was a bunch of armies that kind of just got shoved into areas. So it's like whatever was left was then brought up, and they're just now part of this nation. So there's a new nationalistic kind of way of things. The Lei Tong nation is multiple islands, each ruled by a king. Those kings come together in a council to kind of like decide the general laws. They also promote, what did I call it? I used a Roman term, a tribune, I believe, as their kind of like king of kings, and he serves for a couple of years, and then they elect as a group a new tribune. Just kind of the way I decided to make it. It's got a very like Romanesque, Greek-esque feel as far as like hoplite soldiers being their kind of like standard military units, broken down. And then I went further into more of a Spartan feel with lodges, whereas most of the permanent military force are groups that were indoctrinated into lodges either very early ages, depending on their race, or they were able to kind of earn their way into a lodge, kind of like our Warforged Rakdos. They don't age necessarily because they're Warforged. There's not like a minimum age to do that, but in general, many of the lodges are going to look for children, so they train them up from bottom up. Other ones, there can be other utilization, like Again, back with the Iron Octopus group, they perhaps look more for these slaves that are already trained in these grappling fighting styles, and then have those bolster their ranks as very hardened combatants to join us. So the benefit of lodges, as far as that goes, for the players, I decided is that they're going to get a free skill proficiency that they get to add on, and then once per day, it's kind of like a magical effect, because I want that to be like your lodge is good at this. So once per day, you can give yourself advantage on a roll that you want to do for your lodge. So it's kind of a cool little way to be like, even if your character, let's say, is more of a talker, but yet you're in a lodge that still has fighters because of whatever campaign you're playing in, you can then be like, well, okay, I may not be that great at athletics, but because that's what my lodge does, once per day I can really try to be really good at this. That's the general feel of that. All right, where do we want to start, guys? Do we want to start with, well, let's start with a little bit of campaign things that we might be looking for.
Yeah.
So first of all, let me kind of say some of the things that I like to see in a campaign. So a big part I like to do is character arcs, character stories, getting enough about your background that I can use that both against you and for you, so that your character might have something that they're going to strive for in-game, accomplish a goal, save a family member, overcome a weakness, whatever it is that together maybe we feel that like would be a good character story. I don't want to I don't ever tell you what I'm doing specifically, but if there's like, hey, my character really wants to reunite these two tribes because they're having a conflict, well, now I can create adventure around that, or a period of the adventures, or side trips in a main story arc that perhaps includes interaction between these two groups. Does anyone have anything in particular that you're like, I definitely want to see this in a game?
I think political intrigue is a way to go. I feel that the way that the system is set up, that there is a clear delineation between rich and poor, and in my mind I feel like there's very much an upstairs downstairs feel. I don't know if that's correct or not, that if you are born into wealth, you will spend most of your life living in wealth and living with wealthy people and around wealthy people, and if you are poor, the scope to move up is rare. And if you are someone who is poor, who works within a wealthy household, you will be in a position where you are seen but not heard, and in some cases not even seen. And I feel that that gives scope for a character who does dance between those two societies, whoever that character could possibly be. I like that as a concept. I would say generally in any campaign, what I look for is the big three. I'm looking for role play, I'm looking for investigation, and I'm looking for combat. I'm looking for those as broad strokes. I like role play. I like immersive character development. I feel that the other two lend themselves to that character development as well. So combat, the decisions that you make within that combat should then have repercussions as a character and your place and your dynamic within that party. That's my take on it anyway.
I like it. And yeah, definitely I think there's that class separation. Even like, so they have the lodges as like their standing, air quotes, standing army as their like trained forces, but then if there's a big conflict or a battle, they call the citizens, like they would, you know, like in the Greek society, you call up the citizens and they arm themselves. So if you're a peasant and you can barely afford a spear, then you're gonna die. If you're really rich and you can have like heavy armor, shield, spear, you know, someone who's gonna come with you to fix all your stuff, then you're probably gonna survive a little bit better. So that's gonna striate that even further.
Would there not also be a scope towards that end of saying that if you're rich enough, you're in a position where you can just buy all the gladiators and have them fight in your name?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was definitely that like in the Greek and Roman society as well. and or like you buy yourself a position as like a general. Also, the lodge entry sometimes is almost purchased. At least the chance for your children to be placed within a lodge can be purchased. No guarantees they still accept them, but that's one way lodges earn money, is they go, hey, my 5-year-old here, he's going to be really good for you, here's a big contribution, and they go, oh sure, he can have a chance now, versus others who would have to go through a pre-test to even get the chance.
With the lodges process, and you have kings on each separate island, and within those kings they have different societies essentially broken down in the way that they run that. Do the lodges exist across those kingdoms? So for example, Pius's lodge, will there be a substation in a different kingdom? Or
you know, as I kind of picture them, almost like you would call football teams. You know, like they're local lodges that are region specific, and they draft people from regions. Now, people could submit their children to any lodge if they feel some inclination to it, but they will reside in a kingdom. Now, there might be a similar lodge on another island to what Pius's does, but they might be the, you know, I don't know, the Fox Lodge or the, you know, whatever. Yeah.
But my question would be then, in that situation, I guess it would depend on the lodges, whether there would be antipathy and animosity or collaboration, whether there would be a training school which would specialize in the area, and you get sent to a different island to train with the Fox Lodge before coming back to the Badger Lodge. You know?
Yeah, I think it, like you said, it's kind of lodge specific. I think like in like a sporting team, local areas, like they will compete against each other, like in games, like mini Olympic games sort of things, to like prove themselves and stuff. With that comes local following to those games, local support monetarily. Also, though, there is a little bit of that, like, we're going to travel around the islands, learn from each other. There could be collaborative training. War games are very common to hone their skills, kind of like modern military do. But
in a similar way that a player might get loaned out to a lower level club so that they can get trained up, maybe there might be scope that if there is a conflict in a different area, younger, more junior members of a lodge would be sent out to lend support to a different lodge that has issues at that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally works perfect. That's kind of generally an idea. I know Brad and I had talked about that there can be certain situations, kind of like we're doing here, where we're going to combine multiple people from multiple lodges into a kind of like a super squad to combat some particular thing. So what I'm thinking as far as why you guys are going to stay together is, already we've kind of established sort of a special case scenario for your group where originally you were called forth to go off, see a vampire, at least some of you were. Then a group of you were called back in and gathered up by the High Temple. So I'm kind of thinking that you'll be somewhat like on loan to the High Priestess and special case whatever she needs you guys to do, whatever that ends up being.
That's my biggest thing. I liked about your last campaign in the Shattered Lands when I played Flit was we got to go to these different areas and stuff like that, and intermingle with the populace and stuff like that. Now, she was a way more social character than Pius ever could remotely be, but even so much, you know, I think I'd love to see that part in this campaign continue, you know, with the whole, you know, because Shattered Lands is so different from other games and stuff like that, you know, because you step off an island, you die. So
I think for sure part of it will be that there will be some traveling. I think I'm going to start it off with you guys kind of focused on your island, and then there'll be a few things probably there, and then maybe inner island play, and then we'll see. Like, I don't I don't have a script in mind yet of like where I want things to go specifically. I have where I want things to start, and then I totally want this to be kind of sandboxy as much as you guys want it to be sandboxy. Like,
yeah, for sure.
You're a special case like unit in the lodges sort of thing where you're all assigned to this unit, and then you're basically given carte blanche to do whatever you think you need to do. In addition to that, I think it's going to be kind of like the High Priestess is even going to be like, hey, if things go wrong, this is kind of Mission Impossible. Like, I don't know you guys. I didn't help you guys. I'm not going to pay for you guys to get out of jail. Like, this, I think I kind of want to give it, because I wanted to utilize the lodges and I wanted to incorporate that as people having this kind of, that connection. I think I kind of wanted to also allow you guys to do whatever you want. I don't want you to feel like, oh, I have to follow the orders because that's the orders. There might be missions like that, but I don't necessarily want to pigeonhole anybody in that.
I'm fairly sure it'd be neat. It's good enough they're going to take it.
I think it'd be neat to not, because like your last campaign had the ultimate bad guy. You know, it'd be kind of neat not to have that, you know, that like everybody's a bad guy or whatever the hell, you know, lots of shades of like this background that I got going on right now. Yeah. You know, lots of shades of gray, lots of shades of black. Who knows who the hell is going to backstab you in the back or be your best friend, you know, so.
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be some of that. There might be, like, I do like to have some sort of like in-game in mind of things to happen as far as like as things come about, but like in some of the games I don't know who the bad guy is until I know it. Like, I just put things out there and see what you guys grab onto and what everyone feels is interesting, and then it's like, okay, if this interaction goes this way, then well, maybe that guy's going to be bad, or if this guy got away or didn't come into the end game of a particular mission, then maybe that guy comes back as a bigger, badder person.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I also think that what might be a bad guy for one character might not be a bad guy at all for anyone else, or even more so, they could be an ally for pretty much everyone else, because we're all coming at this from very different places. I know that my character has animosity to at least one NPC, and I would like to see that develop and become ever more antagonistic. That would be fun. Yeah. And I think that could be an interesting direction for the entire party as well, based on who that person is and the way they interact. I've spoken to you about this one. But yeah, I think starting within the city and dealing with a problem within the city makes the most amount of sense at the beginning. And to have the way that we handle that lead to permutations and combinations of reactions which could have far-reaching consequences, because it might turn out that someone that we have a problem with in the city may not be from that city. They may be from one of the other floating islands. They may be from outside of the city. They may be from another plane of resistance. I'm just saying, you know, we don't know that when we start off, you know. He's just some chap who we stabbed. Or some chap who we robbed, or some chap who we lied to, or some chap who we actually dusted mud on as we rode past in a horse, you know.
Cool. Yeah, I love that. I love being able to use these kind of random interactions. I don't want it to be like, oh, everything I do is going to turn out to make me a villain, you know, that's going to come after me. But I want the opportunity of, if we think it's interesting enough. Also, if there is, I made this mistake in the last campaign to Dave, if there is a character that you don't want to become a bad person, or you don't want to eventually, like, this guy's sacred to me, leave him alone, let me know.
Minnesota.
Like, I made Dave's, like, mentor into, like, the second down from the big bad guy. And
but it worked.
It worked for the story. I just it also
But-
caused that his character to leave the campaign and him come in as
Yeah.
a different character because he didn't feel like that character would fight this guy.
It was literally, I told Bill right after that game, I'm like, okay, Bill, we need to have a talk because the next game session could be a PvP game session. So if you don't want that to happen,
To that end,
this needs to happen.
yeah,
So-
that's pretty much the exact reason both of those why I would say Minnesota is off limits.
Yeah.
Apart from anything else, if Rando dies,
Yeah.
I'm coming back as Minnesota. I
Yeah.
mean, that's just
Yeah.
the process.
Perfect. I mean, I wasn't gonna touch Minnesota. I loved him as a character. I think
That was
the
was
group
a-
dynamic here, having a bard in here instead of two rogues kind of works really well.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, I mean, it's a different sort of a face character. And
It's
he's
a very
lot of
different
fun.
vibe, very different process.
Yeah.
It would be a very different campaign entirely if it was Minnesota who I was running instead.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that
Yeah.
I will be using him as an NPC, so you're going to be playing him. So enjoy. And decisions that you make with him, I'm absolutely fine with. Because you already know how I wanted him to how I wanted to run him anyway,
Yeah.
so I would imagine they would go on anyway. But in terms of Randolph's other connections, have at them. Free reign. You
Cool.
do you.
I mean, in general, the ties I want to be, at least for your character, almost sacred. Like, unless you do something to actively ruin your relationship with your ties, and maybe that's something we can transition to now, is we can take a look at the ties. So I have for the stream here the ties book that Dave and I put together. This will be up for sale on Drive-Thru RPG. We are working currently on the editing process of the ties, so that is not currently available, but will be available. It is
very, very, very soon.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
It's about 14 pages of just stuff that your character can utilize and you can buy. So I gave everyone 17 points to go through this. And we were talking about connections and
You scroll-
everything. So
Scroll to the point.
Oh yeah, the point system.
Breakdown.
So we did here is in the rules here, we kind of broke down how we thought the points should work. For a poor gritty game, you're going to get like very few points. For an aristocratic or a higher level game, and since the players are starting, are we starting at 4, or did I let you bump up to 5 at the start? I think it's 4.
Oh, we're going to 5?
I don't know. We're still 4, right?
Oh.
You
You
said
started at 4.
Start
You said 4.
Okay. Because I think we started you at 3, and then I bumped you up to 4.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
I knew I bumped you up a level. I couldn't remember where I started you.
I'm like, if you want to put me up to level
I'll
5,
take
now,
5, yeah.
Fantastic. Let's go.
Nice.
Yep.
So we'll start at 4. So I figured at level 4, roughly, we're kind of gauging that you get about a point every level or so to spend or to save up to eventually like upgrade things. Some of the things like your ties, your companions, you can upgrade to give them special skills or abilities depending on how you want to utilize them. So yeah, we started with 17 in this one. I felt that was kind of like as if I started you in like the mid-average, and then you leveled 4 times. So that's kind of where we're at on there. So we have various things you can buy. So here we're looking at our contacts page here. So for major contacts here, this is kind of taking a look at people that you know really well. People that, as we said, they're trustworthy normally. Like, obviously, if you're going to ask them to do something, you know, totally against their character or their nature or get them fired, they may say no. But in general, they're going to be strong, bonded to you through some reason. Like your brother, like your teacher, maybe. So those especially I want to leave, like, those are yours. Unless you do something that makes the story go in a different way, I want those to stay yours without us necessarily messing with that to a certain extent that we're gonna ruin that. I always feel that you spent points, you spent effort on making that character or that tie and figuring out how your character would know them, and spent resources that otherwise Like, because if it turns out that they're bad or they're working against you, then in my head you just spent like almost like you spent money on something that you're not going to get value for. You buy a brand new car, it turns out to be a lemon, you're pissed, you're going to return it. Like, I don't want you to have to return these. So they're going to generally be left alone unless your character does something that causes that to happen.
Sure.
We have everything broken down from assets that you can start with, whether you have magical items, which I think at least one of you starting with a magical item is
Me.
Oh, two.
Yeah, my shield now is magic. Yeah, my shield is now magical.
Okay, that makes sense for you, 100%.
Yeah,
that makes sense. I was looking at common magical items because they're the only things that I could actually feasibly get.
Yeah,
that really? For a bard, and I was like, I didn't like any of these.
Yeah, commons are so bad.
Yeah, they're kind of flavorful, and I mean that's in general what the whole ties thing are supposed to be. Things that add flavor to your character. I think Peos, you took the Sentinel Shield, right?
Yeah, that's what you told me to take.
Well, I suggested down, actually. Jeez,
no, it makes sense for me to take that.
For your character, it made a lot of flavorful sense.
The shield that gives you Sentinel?
Yeah. It gives you, it makes you so you can't be surprised, right? Or something like that. You get a bonus on your perception.
I didn't.
That's your dude. That's so your dude.
Yeah.
I know, right? That's when I said I was thinking about doing a shield, and Bill's like, "Oh, I have it." And
yeah, he was thinking like a +1 shield, and I was like, no, you need to look at Sentinel Shield, dude. Take a look at that one.
So I can read it off real quick since I find it here. So Sentinel Shield, for everybody that doesn't know what it is armor shield, uncommon magical item. While holding this shield, you have advantage on initiative rolls and wisdom perception checks. The shield is emblazoned with a symbol of an eye.
Yeah.
So we're going to flavor it as the eyes of the badger that is on my shield presently. Because since I am part of the badger lodge and my shield is designed like that. So,
and he's playing a rogue subclass that came out of the Odysseys of the Dragon Lore Kickstarter and all that stuff that I backed. It's very Greek themed, so I added them to available classes, and so that shield's almost borderline broken for a rogue, but it's pretty cool, so I love it. It works for your character so much. Brad, you took a magical item too, right?
Yep. I got the Ring of Free Action. While I wear this ring, difficult terrain doesn't cost me extra movement. In addition, magic can neither reduce your speed nor cause you to be paralyzed or restrained. The reason I chose this specific ring, because it made most sense to like behind the concept of an octopus. There are these very mobile, limp creatures that can get through tight spaces, like make themselves very thin. Like they're mastermind puzzle solvers. Like they're amazing creatures. And I was kind of thinking it's like, be like the whole like octopus stance kind of situation, like through his grappling and movements as an octopus in his training. I was going very thematic on that item. This item was gifted him by his master after he finished his lodge training.
Very dope. Yeah. And I mean, it makes sense and is not at all a bad choice for a monk that's going to want to grapple and do all sorts of crazy things.
Plus, also, as a Warforged as well, I like the idea of like you just looking at rough terrain and going, no.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit. Are you wearing it, or is it emblazoned? Is it like burnt into you?
Well, it requires attunement, so it's basically he wears it.
Okay.
Yeah, in his story, it was a gift anyway, so it's a nice add-in to that. Cool.
I like that.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
And then we had a bunch of people take some context. I don't necessarily want to go too in depth because that's story, unless you want to.
Spoilers.
If there's something you want to talk about that you think your other characters would already know about you, I mean, like everyone would know Randolph has a brother.
Right. I got a brother. I mean, I put him. Let's put it this way: I have a brother. I've not placed him as a companion. I've not placed him as a major contact. I've not placed him as a follower. He's an informant. He's at that low tier of that's the relationship where he is for me. I have a companion. I have a major contact. I've got 3 followers, and I've got 6 informants. My guy knows people. That's what he does best, shockingly enough. But the people that he knows tend to be localized in a very small section of the city. So that section of the city he knows really well. But like Wallace and the Wire, like he'll be like, "This is me, yo." Like as soon as I step outside of my corner, I do not know very much at all outside that part of the city.
Cool.
Hey, Bill.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
So yeah, for me, I went a very different route than Randolph did. As for Payos, I did 3 ties actually. I did the one that was already mentioned, which is the enchanted magical item, the shield, and then I went with fame. I chose regional fame because of all our past exploits and stuff like that. So yes, there's tales told about Payos, and the adventures of this, that, and the other. And then I after that I was like, 5 points left. What to do with 5 points left? And I'm like, do I dare? And Bill's like, yeah, go for it. Payos now has a badger. He chose the pet a tie that for 5 points you get a medium creature. So
you got a pet. I got a pet too. I got a tiny little weasel called Gary.
Gary.
Awesome.
Good friends.
I've trained him to like go out ahead when I go outside to see if there's anyone who I owe money to, and they'll come back and let me know.
I love
awesome.
it.
So he's been trained to actually go off ahead, like to seek out danger. Right. And he comes back and lets me know what's up, and he just lives inside my pocket.
We're still in the training process of the badger right now, so we haven't quite made it there.
You might want to keep Gary away for a little while.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is
I need that
feral badger. That's what I'm hearing.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He doesn't
I need
bite
that one
Pam,
extra
Piles.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need that one extra point.
Next level you can spend.
Next level. So,
Brad, you were
Bill.
gonna go?
Yeah, I was going to ask, how rare are Warforges in your world?
They're not super common. So in the historical setting of it, in general, I think most of them were created pre-shattering.
Okay.
They're like multiple thousands. Probably about 1,000 years ago, there was a empire that was ruled by mages in the former world, and they created things like that. Okay. And people didn't like them anymore and revolted against them, and so no one was making them after that for the most part. And then some of those mage type people came back. Spoiler alerts for 1,000 years ago. Some of those people came back to help fight the demonic war, and they brought with them some Warforged, which probably were forged sometime between that. So you could either have some memories of pre-shattering, you could have kind of had like a system wipe, or there's another region that's recently kind of rediscovered the Artificer style of things, so they're building kind of Warforged, but I would think that they're not super common, and those that did survive from pre-shattering, and whether they could be memory wiped or be traumatized by the demons, that's kind of up to you how you want to play that. Or where you want to come from. Okay,
so I guess in my case, being a Warforged, I put 5 points into fame, so the whole city knows who I am. It's like, oh, you're a Warforged, a walking Warforged of some type, and plus being a martial artist, so like everyone knows who I am and where I'm from, basically.
And you were a gladiator, you said.
Exactly, so gladiator. That's also true. Yeah. On top of
that would have given you fame as well. So you're this kind of like this almost, locally citywide mythical hero sort of a thing.
Yeah.
Which is why you were included in the group in the second iteration. Yeah.
And I have 3 points in followers, so I have 9 followers.
Okay.
For my lodge.
Perfect. Yeah, and we can work out specifically what you're looking for those followers to be doing as far as like how they're going to assist you. Yeah. In general, like if you want to bring like followers on a mission, they're not necessarily like straight combatants. They're not going to
Right,
go to the
yeah.
dungeon and clear it for you.
Right.
But they might be prepping meals or cleaning your armor, or, you know, if you spend points on things like giving them skills to give them blacksmithing or whatever, they could be sharpening your blades, or,
Yeah.
you know.
I may
doing
switch
minor
that up a
repairs.
bit. Because it's like, due to my backstory, I was kind of like, it'd be really cool to have that following. But I was like, now that I think about it, I mean, just switch it up a bit,
Yeah,
to be
I mean,
honest.
that's why we're talking about it now, is nothing's set in stone. So
Right.
look at it, and you're also only had the written word of it and not necessarily
Yeah.
interpretation of it, which is the beautiful thing about these things, is that any DM can use this however they want.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want people to be like, oh, these are all my guys and I'm going to send in as cannon fodder.
Right. Here's my squad.
I might kill them off really quickly if that's the case. But
Yeah.
I don't think my squad's going to go running into anything at all.
yeah.
Right.
No, I've got like a blind beggar as part of my informants. I don't see them being very useful.
And things like informants.
I do have a
in
Goliath
particular.
prostitute though, so that's good.
Yeah, there you go. You know, there's plenty of use for that one.
And I mean, it depends on, I mean, as far as, you know, DM wise, you know, for the audience that's watching this, you can do it however you want to. In one of our campaigns that I ran, Temples of Humlatik, this one player had followers, and it was all about, you know, fight the power, you know, eco-terrorism, stuff like that. Suddenly she was wanted for murder and stuff like that, and I rolled on a table and see if they were loyal to her. Half of them were, half of them like, I didn't sign up for this.
Right.
So she actually lost followers. She is, so yeah, so depending on how gritty you want your game and how intense you want it, you know.
I mean, that's all going to be character driven. In general, like if you really wanted a group of followers that were like a shield wall sort of thing,
Yeah.
then I mean, if you want to spend points to give a few of them their, you know, fighting proficiency, they're going to be kind of like they start as like commoner stats in like the D&D book. If you wanted them to be basic fighters, we could have that. It's just like eventually you guys are going to face things that we're going to be like, oh, here's a beholder. Well, that might take
right.
eye stock for you, but after that you're
But you could be like the Viking dude from the Vikings, you know, have your shield wall and be like, ah! So
I also feel like Brad's got an opportunity with his followers. They don't, because they are his followers, they're following his fame, they're following his success.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily have to be beneath him in any kind of
exactly.
like if you had your teachers within the lodge, or if you had your captains within the lodge, they could still technically be your followers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That would mean that if they could be in a position where they're not even in the city, that they're working out with a different lodge, they're working out doing a job out on a different island, and you're getting that information about what's going on with politics outside of the city or trade outside of the city that's coming in, and you're getting that information sent to you because they
also
want you to know about it.
No, to add to Dave's thought process, dude, basically followers for you would be celebrity. You'd be, you know, a celebrity, and you could have, you know, wealthy merchants and stuff like that flaunted because that's what they did.
Like inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, oh my God, did you hear about blah, blah, blah? Oh my God, you have to invite him to this private party that we're throwing.
Exactly. This is Warforged. You know? Oh yeah, he won this massive gladiator. He's some martial artist. He'll be great for the party.
Did you hear?
Yeah.
He saved the prince with that other little short dude, you know?
Yeah, you could even have as a follower mages that are working within the city who are looking to actually get involved in the artificing process, and who want to use you as a form of live research. You know, like they're saying, if you can come in once a month and I can examine you, see what you can do under duress, and I have an idea of what kind of magical processes are necessary for that to happen, then you are able to key into that particular aspect as well. I mean, I'm just
yeah, of course.
So I pulled up followers for the stream to see. So it's the way we described it is you have a devout group of people that believe in you and your cause. So for whatever reason, they like you and they believe in you, they believe in what you're doing, and they can be readily accessible when you call upon them, depending on the location of the followers and the character, of course. They're trustworthy and will do as you ask of them within reason. If you should fall out of grace with them, that's kind of story-based. And then we also put the followers are basic commoners, so like they don't have crazy skills or anything. They could be wealthy merchants, they could be things like that. That's fine. But like if you wanted them to have specific skills that you're going to call upon, that would be something that you probably need to upgrade, or look into perhaps one of the other categories of ties that involved like companions or contacts, or
that's probably better.
So we have sidekicks as well. Like those are going to be a little bit more like, I think it costs
6 points,
a little bit more, but then you can like level them up, sort of a thing.
Just get two sidekicks, Brad, and name one of them Tick and the other one Talk. And they're both Warforged.
Oh my gosh, that was bad.
That was so bad.
So yeah, we can develop that a little further on how you want to utilize them. The idea for me with followers is like, I need someone who's going to go run and do these things for me. Or I need, someone who will perform basic tasks, because it's like, I don't want to take all agency out of your characters doing things in the game. I want,
right.
So yeah, we can revisit or look into that as you, debate things.
Right.
Any questions as far as how any of the other ties or anything, or
Shockingly, companion.
Yeah.
My companion is my mum.
Awesome.
And I want to know if that feeds into allowances later on, because I have a lower allowance coming in from my companion. Would that be something that would be as part of them being a companion? Or is it a separate entity that would go into the allowance section?
I mean, technically, you pay for the allowance. Now you're fine tying them. I love the idea of you tying them together. That she's your companion and she's giving you an allowance. Her being a companion gives you further benefits that you can draw on. Like you could say, okay, I get an allowance from an uncle, but I don't really ever see the guy. So whatever, like he's out there, and maybe the DM and the story guide can call on him to come into your life for something and ask you for a favor because of that allowance. But here we're more specifically saying, okay, this is my companion, my mom, and she grants me the benefit to be able to call upon her and have her do more major substantial benefit to my character and to the story, in this case a tie to a certain level of society as well, and probably call upon her resources as far as that goes if you need it. But then we're also tying the allowance to it, so just don't make your mom pissed off.
Hey Bill, I want to let you know I made one quick change actually.
Okay.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop 1 point from followers and reduce it to 6 followers, and then put 1 point for the contacts, removing the 2 minor just to have 1 major contact.
Okay.
The reason why I want to do this is because I like a very personal, intense, dramatic character arc.
Okay.
Like we discussed before, I like high intensity, high risk, high reward kind of thing, where it's like something happens and it's very personal to my character in a very dramatic sense.
Okay.
Love that.
Sounds good. I love it. And again, we can dive further into those private.
Yeah, of course.
You can use it, but I love it.
Okay.
What's the name of the high priestess?
Let me look what I wrote down. Believe it or not, Dave, I did write it down.
Dave does not believe you at all.
No.
I know, you shouldn't.
No, I believe you.
it-
I'm saying Dave doesn't believe you.
No.
I think you're great. But that Dave, woo boy, you
It's
should
those
get
damn
it.
Daves.
Hey,
Right back.
No, David's are fine. It's Dave's.
Yeah. Agreed.
Theodosia McCrilly, and I will put that in chat for everyone.
Okay, because she's my major contact, so I really should know her name.
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
I'll put it in chat for those of you watching live stream as well. She is the high priestess, like, kind of this island area. There will be other high priestesses elsewhere.
Right, okay.
Let's go back to that then. I think, one last thing on the ties before we move on, because I know you had some political world building questions, that some of which I know and some of which will come up together. The last thing I wanted to point out for, anyone watching was we kind of came up with this idea of wealth in the system, and it was refined to the point where it's like we wanted to take away the need for worrying about coins on everyday basis things. Like, you're city based, you have a job, you work for a lodge, you work for whatever, you sing for your coin, you have an allowance from your mom, whatever it is. You have a reliable income source such that if you want to stay in a tavern, you can stay in a tavern. And then your allowance or your inheritance or whatever covers a certain amount of that expense, so that you can go, okay, I'm going to walk into if you're wealthy, you just walk into any tavern and you order whatever the heck you want, and it's probably covered by your allowance as long as you're not getting crazy. If you're poor and you walk into a middle class tavern, then maybe you got to pick the cheapest things on there. But I didn't necessarily want it to be like, okay, now subtract 2 gold from your list, now subtract 1 silver. Just you go in and you go, hey, I'm gonna order, oh man, these pints, they're really expensive here. I'll order the swill. I'm not gonna order the good stuff, Right. And then we just hand wave that. Like, you say I toss them some coins, and that's all that we need to really accomplish for that matter. Okay. And it's designed for day-to-day living expenses, not like I'm going to buy my adventuring gear with my allowance money. It's like I'm going to go into a restaurant or a pub. I'm going to get my room paid for the night. Or I have, an apartment I rent, and that pays whatever. You guys are good on that, and some people like that bookkeeping, and I don't want to have to worry about it on that. I'll throw money about, and you guys will buy items and do stuff like that, but I don't want
you. Hey, shit. I'm stealing it all.
Your dinner to worry, be the worry.
I mean, I'm going to get people to give it to me. That's what's going to happen.
Yes, for sure.
I would also throw out to the feed and to you guys for one of my followers I'm having as a #1 fan. And I have not come up with any way of describing them in any way, shape, or form. And I'm absolutely open to whoever wants to come up with an idea there just now before the end of the feed out there. Yeah. And I'm open to pretty much any suggestion that comes through.
Cool.
You guys know.
Cool. So if anyone, we do have a couple people that have been in and out of the chat during the stream. So if you're still out there and active, feel free to toss out suggestions in the Twitch stream chat. Another benefit of joining us live, as well as during our games, you can give advantages, disadvantages, healing potions, stuff like that, using the free stream points that you earn just by hanging out with us and keeping us company. All right, I think as far as the ties book, we're kind of good on that for now. So we're going to drop the ties page there so that I don't have to worry about what I'm giving away for free. So let's go back, because we had some questions. I'm going to start, unless someone else has a more pressing thing, with the list that David gave me earlier. The geography of the local area. All right, each island, I tend to say, is kind of like Hawaii size. Not that I have done the measurements of it all. It's a decent size island that you can travel around. There's going to be like 3 or 4 bigger cities island with little towns, some forested farmlands. This particular one, there's like a small mountain range that runs in the middle of it. Then there's like forest and farmland that surround it. And then basically at the edges, they were broken off from the ground at some point. So like a lot of these cities have been built post shattering, like at the edge, because that works really well for airships, and that's allowed them to grow into what they are now. But other
How big
ones,
is the cities? Are we talking like 1,000 households or 10,000, 100,000?
I think it varies. I think they're more akin to like what like a Greek Roman city would be, not Rome probably, because that was massive. But you know,
1,000 as a upper threshold then.
Yeah, I'd say you could probably get up to like 50,000 people, like in a capital sort of a thing. Like a big enough. Okay. They've had hundreds of years to kind of recoup the deficit of people. So, but those areas are more densely compact because they don't necessarily provide much income sources out in the wild, except for like those who perhaps there's a little bit of game left or game that's out there that's kind of probably strictly enforced, like how much you can hunt, and they don't want to get rid of everything because there are limited resources. That's one of the things that I feel will drive conflict in the world as a whole, is that limitation on the resources that your island provides. Mystically or magically or whatever, every island has some sort of water source. There's like a stream or a river or whatever, they do form, and they usually run to either lakes that are either then just like maintained enough by pulling water out enough that it doesn't flow over, or literally will flow through cities and dump off the side of the island into the mist below.
When it dumps off the edge of the island into the mist below, is there scope for the water to actually siphon round, be collected, so there's like a cloud formations underneath, and then the cloud comes back up to dump it back down again? I'm just thinking about the weather formation process of, is it a rainy place? Is it a dry Italian Mediterranean dusty kind of place?
This particular place is more, and most of these islands here are more on the dry Mediterranean sort of climate. The water, each island, like I said, there's magical things that are happening with the island, which is why they can still float. And that sort of magic also sustains some of the life of the island, provides some sort of sustenance and things. I do have mechanical things in my head or story, but you guys wouldn't know that. Those processes also help provide the water and everything. Like the island wants to keep people alive, wants to keep things going. And for whatever reason. So then the water will dissipate. It'll fall off and then kind of mist out. Some of it will kind of rain down a little bit to the mist below. A lot will turn into clouds, but there's not much to stop the cloud formations from flying. So it just kind of like does its own thing. There will be rain from time to time that still happens naturally here. There's a lot of evaporation from the mist below that will form things, but in general, your island in particular is very like Italian, kind of dry,
and steady throughout the year. That in terms of the seasons, they are regular seasons, regular 4 seasons. And in terms of adverse weather phenomena, is it a place that experiences anything more than hurricanes or gales? Does it have whirlwinds? Does it have freak snowstorms? Do these things happen at all?
In your island, no. It's pretty like that Mediterranean kind of temperate climate thing. It's pretty like you get a little bit of flows. Your mountain regions will get some snow. Your other regions, will get some rain. But in fact, like some of the more severe storms almost seem like it's tempered a little bit. Like you wouldn't want to fly out of the island in certain weather, but when you're on the island, it might be raining, it might be thundering, lightning, but it's not like even as bad as it might be outside of the island. There's almost like those of you who travel on airships from time to time would notice that you which some of you had in the games, you would travel out to a certain point and the weather gets worse. Like once you leave this bubble, the winds are stronger and all that stuff.
Right. Again, going back to your Kauai analogy, once you get past the little breakers on the atoll and you're out in the open ocean, once you're out of that little breaker of your bubble into the open air, that's where the dangers really lie. All right. Going back to the island with the cities and the towns, cities, the building structures that we tend to have, are we dealing with, even in the big cities, are we talking about at most 2-story terraced, narrow, cobbled streets?
Yeah, in general, I think, maybe the highest one would be around 4 stories, which would be like a Capitol building or a tower that's specifically built up to like get a view. We lost Brad there for a bit. Hopefully he comes back.
Did we?
Which is of course got everything else in weird positions. There he is.
There we go.
Hooray!
So yeah, at most maybe 4 stories. In general, these cities in this town area, this nation states, tend to be a little bit more sprawled. Like you said, 2 stories is kind of like a generally large building. Anything bigger would be specifically a large building, like some sort of government structure or something.
And lower class, middle class would be a terrace or possibly a semi-detached situation with market square spacings. Whereas with the richer areas, you're looking at private guards or guards at the gates to those gated communities, and they would be individually detached houses with their own land spaces, kept separate from each other with their own little driveways going up into them, or even walled off in various ways, right?
Yeah, that sounds like that's
feasible.
About right. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm
okay, fine. I'm just trying to think in my head about my guy, about
where mom and dad live versus where he lives. And
I'm just thinking more like, if my guy has like a bad night with his girlfriend and he has to sleep out in like the pig trough, is he going to get wet? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fine. I'm just covering that base. So that helps. That's good. That lets me know my breakdown of the local city. That lets me know about the topography of the area as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think like many, like there's a king that, not many like Minnesota, but like many. There's a king that kind of rules the island. Then they've kind of appointed like mayor type positions. They're usually obviously going to be based on your status in society, your service in the military, or perhaps even a lodge. Even like lodges, because of the fighters, they don't necessarily always live super long, but there's a point where they've probably served long enough where they've kind of get to basically retire, and that varies by the lodge and by your position and your health, but those would probably get preferential treatment. Wealthy families, wealthy landowners probably get preferential treatment.
But there are not just lodges, then would you say that there are private clubs, gentlemen clubs?
Oh yeah.
Not like strip clubs. I mean like
wealthy, like get together, smoke cigars, drink.
Right. Or you just have a place where you sit so you're not with your wife, you know, and you just have like a pizza and you're just relaxing and enjoying the weather.
Yeah.
You know, and then you discuss your trade with somebody else there behind closed doors.
And that was a very like Spartan thing to do too, is that they really like, I mean, they're a pretty messed up society in a lot of ways, but you know, they had their, like, the guys' time was the most important. Like, they would go hang out with other soldiers or other people, the other guys, and they, you know, go home with their women every now and then and rape them, and that was about it. But these people aren't going home to rape, because I don't want to condone that sort of a thing. That's one of the things I'm not going to include in my games, any, like, rape or anything like that. I'm not cool with that. There are slaves in the society because that's the way it is in like a Roman Greek society, but they tend to be in general, like, respected in their position. They're captured citizens from other areas, usually, like those who had to surrender in battle, or, you know, couldn't pay their debts or whatever. More like indentured servants than necessarily straight slaves. But let's see, you have on here gangs as a thing, and I think there would be small street gangs that would kind of reside over, you know, a few blocks here and there.
What would they be doing? What is their principal crime? Is it drugs? Is it extortion? What is their source of income? If it is smuggling, I could see that, especially since they would be mostly port cities, going from island to island, collecting and taking on wares and moving them onto other places. If it's extortion, what is the scope and range and effectiveness of the local militia guard process? And is that perhaps something that we would need to look into as part of our campaign? If it is drugs, is it a big problem? Is it a problem that is rising? And again, is it built locally? Is it a local manufacturer, or is it again something that's imported into the area? I don't necessarily need to have the answers today.
Well, I have a very in-depth drug and narcotic list for my world, along with in-game effects that they have. So there's definitely that in this world.
Please send that through to me if that's okay.
Yes, I will. I'll make sure I find the PDF or print out a new one and send it to you. So yes, there's definitely some smuggling going on. There's some low-grade things. In the vampire game, the sergeant was smoking a black stick. That in itself is kind of like a meth style, like keeps you up, keeps you alert drug I've got in my world, but then when you stop, you crash hard. I also have addiction rules if we want to dive into that sort of thing. Depends on where the characters end up taking themselves. But yeah, so there's definitely that. I think extortion, sure, that would be a thing. Prostitution running, sort of things like that. There might be some gangs that are a little bit more heavily controlling that. And so I think it varies on the region in the city as to what they're into. Like the ones closer to the docks are involving bringing in the drugs, and then they probably will sell them or whatever to other other gangs throughout the city. And I think that's open to interpretation however we decide we want it all to happen. But I see that, yeah, like any major city, there's probably that underground of disreputable people.
Yeah. I think and they would have their focus and their rules and their own regulations that work concurrent to the actual government of the day. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the crime and punishment thing too. So there's a certain amount of, they pay off a lot of people, and that's another way that city officials make good money, by taking bribes from various criminal entities. There would be some sort of prison. I think long-term imprisonment, if you do something bad enough, you're probably sold into like a slavery situation to remove you from the region and get you to do something under someone's watchful eye rather than house someone indefinitely. There's of course the drunk tank, you were fighting, we're going to toss you in the local city guard.
Right.
There would be some sort of city guard group of trained fighting force that is there each city to keep peace and act as a first line of defense if, you know, someone invades, and then until the lodges and the local militia can be called up.
And you've also got the gladiatorial battle arenas as well for your more violent battles.
Right. Exactly. Like that's part of like, okay, you did something bad enough, you're going to become a slave. Now that can be sent to a gladiator, that could be sent to a lord out there because you're a reoccurring smuggler and we're tired of you, so we're just going to, you know, sell you to someone over there. The less reputable city officials maybe sell you off to the barony and let you be food. You know,
or the less reputable members might actually turn around and say, pay me off and I will send you away, and you just disappear back into the undergrowth again under a different name.
Exactly. That's all kind of up to how we want the story to play out and where things take me. We have here gods. So this is an area that I have struggled with in my life because I made 50, 60 gods at one point in time for one of my settings, and no one ever pays attention to them. So it's also, I think, hard for people who follow the stream until maybe we get to like some critical mass where people care. I'd almost say I'd just as soon take like the standard 5th edition deity list or an iteration thereof and utilize that, and we can always tweak or add to that if we feel like a character would have a certain divine attachment to a being that those don't fit into, if that works.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what I was going with really with the gods and demigods element of it is not so much the myth,
okay,
or the relationship dynamic that may exist between them and a cleric, because obviously in Dungeons and Dragons, gods are real because they grant clerics the powers and abilities that they have, and warlocks had take on a patron, which is a god by another name. You know, I understand that. What I'm saying is, in some worlds, gods walk amongst men. And in some worlds, gods have avatars that represent them amongst men. Do we have that as an issue?
Like a walking avatar?
It's just a saga and mythic legend.
I've kind of so far left them as saga and mythic legend.
Okay, fine.
I'm not gonna write it out of the realm of possibility, but it's not like in Greek and Roman times when they're like, oh yeah, you know, like Zeus came down and slept with all these women, so we now have all of his kids that are basically major players in this world because they're powerful and great.
Right.
No, I'm cool with leaving that out. Odyssey of the Dragon Lords, they use some of that as that's a possible background thing that you can do. But I'm kind of cool with leaving that out for now. They make their presence felt through their clerics and paladins for the most part.
But yeah, I mean, and again, you've got enough opportunities within the races and classes. Like, because I'm just, I had like a sorcerer with draconic origin, you know, like, so you have that magical residue because your god was, or your lineage is that of a dragon, and then people start applying that to say, oh, it's Bahamut or it's Tiamat.
Yeah.
Oh, Bahamut was your great great granddaddy, were they? Oh, okay. Cool,
so your parents shake a dragon.
Yeah, you're still level 1.
You're still a punk, so
you still got 8 hit points, and you're going to die within the first mission.
I'm a dragonborn.
Go say hi to your grandpa. So there we go on that. Let's see. We have teaching, saga, poems, plays, performances.
The planar element as well. I wanted to know.
Oh, planes, yeah.
Yeah, Shadowfell, astral plane, celestial plane, infernal plane.
Sure.
Do these things exist?
Sure, why not? Yeah, no, I think they exist. There's not like, I think it's like in regular D&D, right? Like you don't necessarily touch them very easily. Like you have to be
not often,
powerful being to be able to transition from one to the other. So there's not a lot of interplanar mixing going on.
Right, except when you're dealing with certain spells which actually rely upon you going to certain planes. Like seeing ability as part of their process, it says that you have access to see the astral plane around you, and any creatures that are on the astral plane at that time you can actually see.
Yeah.
And we have a monk, which is way of the astral self.
Yeah.
And so there is within the D&D world, the astral plane and the Shadowfell plane are considered to be semi-permeable membranes of the material plane, whereas the celestial and infernals are harder to access with only certain gateways to them, or certain instances where you would end up in them.
Yeah.
And if that's the same case with Letong, then that obviously still works within game mechanic. And I also feel personally that that would work thematically to this end as well, where perhaps when the world was shattered, people found that the astral plane and the Shadowfell plane may not have been as shattered. So lands that may be broken apart physically on the material plane may be stuck together still on those planes.
Oh, that's kind of like manifest zones in Eberron.
Yes.
So to give you a quick example, so like manifest zones in Eberron are based. Yeah, I know. Manifest zones across Eberron are basically zones in specific areas where a specific plane of existence kind of bleeds into the material plane of that zone.
Okay.
Like, take for example, like the plane of fire. Fire magic's going to be a little bit more powerful. People could have more intense emotions. It affects everything within that zone, essentially.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of that. Yes, it's going to be a weird dynamic because not only was the land shattered, it was then lifted a mile up. But I love the idea that in the astral plane and the Shadowfell, that it's still like a contiguous like continent.
Exactly, yeah.
Wasn't shattered, even though it's gonna like basically the plane moved up with that.
Yep.
Which makes sense on a different like storyline that you guys don't know yet. So yeah, I like it. So if there's like a way
guys, season 3, you had to hit
over
first.
and move over. Yeah.
Remember Chess Zero, season 3.
Yeah, no. And I think there would be like elemental planes as well that are separate entities, sort of thing. I don't know if there's like a lot of direct bleed over. There might be areas where a certain islands or whatever have an affinity to a certain maybe elemental plane or something that we can explore in the story eventually, but not like, I don't think as much as like Brad was saying that there's like a mixture of fire in here makes everyone like angrier or whatever. But I love the idea of like Shadowfell and Astral Plane kind of merging with this new one, but yet they weren't broken. That's cool.
Cool. Because apart from anything else, if you're dealing with that, then you get to throw in with the Feywild being as part of either one of those two. You get to say, well, the Fae would not have actually noticed that this shit happened over 1,000 years because that's like a 10-second period for them. You know?
Yeah, and they didn't care.
They didn't care.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, no, that works for me.
You get like half of a fairy ring on one end and like half of a fairy ring on the whole other island, hundreds of miles apart from each other. My last question is purely for my character as part of his character.
Yeah.
That's what.
I mean, this part was about teaching sagas, poems, plays, performances. I think, like in Greek society, that those are going to hold a strong place in society. There are, the thinkers, the scholars that are out there. There are a heavy push towards the arts. These islands are fairly stable at the time. I mean, they have a few incursion issues here and there, but in general, they love their plays, they love their arts, they love their sagas, all that. So there would definitely be, however much we want to incorporate that into game to game, that would be there.
Okay. I mean that would be a good thing because since 2 of us so far has fame, I think. Yeah, so there would definitely be that written about us and what we've done in those past 2 game sessions, at least, So
I would want to know who wrote those, and if it wasn't me, I'd like to know who the fuck they were and why the fuck they get off do songs about my mates. petty rivalries are a great thing to have, Shakespearean love style.
Yeah.
Another thing I'd like to add before I go is I think like we all enjoy combat. I think some of us also would also enjoy like story focused combat in that particular aspect, where it kind of like leads to something even bigger or even wider. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The bonus
less
to
monsters and more we're looking for this purpose, and there was a fight as a result of decisions that we made.
Yeah. The bonus of running a campaign versus like the session, like the one shots too, is that like if you guys get into a role-playing string and you're just like, oh, this is good, I'm not going to cut it down at all, like I'm not going to speed this up, I'm just let you guys go for it. Then when we get into a combat, we can be like, all right, we're going to pick this up next time. Or, you know, instead of like in some of the one-shots, I was like, okay, I got to get going here, so
let's speed things up.
So I want, you know,
cliffhangers.
Yeah, we can totally go, and now we're going to pick this up next time. And so the game sessions can vary based on that, but I love that ability in a campaign where you
the intensity, just like, oh shit, this is about to go down next episode.
Yes. Then the next episode, 5 hours later of combat.
Exactly. Like Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, but that also allows me to up that aspect of it, whereas like I've been running like, okay, here's 1 or 2 guys for you guys to beat on, because that's all I have the time to run.
Like a random encounter.
Is hard.
Balance is hard, and I can make some crazy like multi-level tiered multi-combatant combat thing happen if that's what falls into the story, and we don't have to delay for a long, you know, like we can draw that out as long as it has to be.
That I think it just dawned on me for another thought in combat. It'd be nice to do the more, I wouldn't say traditional monsters of old, but you know, the you know, the water weirds and the, you know, the mimics and all the unusual, you know, instead of, you know, orcs, goblins, people,
typical
beholders, you know. Yeah, it'd be neat to see, you know, from good old first, second, third edition, even, you know, the old monsters from, you know.
I mean, that's going to depend on what kind of path our campaign goes down.
Yeah, it's true.
It does.
And we're going to face them with. If we're dealing with gangs, we're going to be dealing with bandit leaders and berserkers.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
I mean, unless it turns out the gangs are actually weird creatures anyway, and then you're like, oh, well, that also makes sense.
For sure.
But like, I have to whatever we have is going to be weird. In terms of it doesn't necessarily have to follow the stat block as laid down by 5th edition.
Exactly.
I like having little kinks in little wrinkles in a combat where like you're facing a bandit leader, and then they pull out their sword and they do a multi-attack with you, and then they breathe fire. And you're like, oh, wait, what was that last one? You know, that's cool for me. Or like when you're facing Sprite and they suddenly pull out a spiritual weapon, which is a giant hammer, which just comes launching at you. Like, hold on, the Sprite's a cleric? And I go, oh yeah.
Or like layer actions, which are fun.
Yeah. And that's something else that'll be easier for me to develop into combats and stuff. In a campaign versus one shot. Like I did alter a little bit the last couple of things that you had, mainly the succubus. I changed a little bit of how she worked just because I felt it worked better. Like I wanted a succubus, but she didn't fit the challenge rating, so I played a little bit. Not that you guys didn't handle her fine. So yeah, that's definitely something I want to play through. Now Dave's expressed desire for more like fantastical creatures. Are we wanting this campaign to be a little bit more? I mean, I know we've had political intrigue thrown in there, and I'm cool with us working this into like a one big grand thing. Do we want to focus somewhere like more like city interaction base or whatever happens?
Well, that's the thing is the fantastical creatures could be worked into that kind of concept. I mean, shit. what's his face from Waterdeep, Beholder King guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the leader of the Underdark.
Xanathar, yeah.
You know,
Let's go kill Xanathar.
Yeah, that's his name.
He's
That's
a crime
name.
mob boss. Let's go kick his ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that
100%.
kind of idea.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I agree with that. I think that, I would just say, take us out of our comfort zone.
Okay.
Yeah, hell, a bartender could be a mind flayer.
Give us a monster description that will actually have us scratching our heads for a second, going, "Wait, what is that?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I try to
drink
play
and
with them.
it slaps you back. It's a water weird.
Yeah.
I like to play with them a little bit because.
Oh, cute. That's a terrible idea.
So-
What are you?
Hold on, let me write them all down.
It looks like beer.
My man is a
Like
drinker.
flubber.
What are you doing?
Like fucking flubber.
You go to the latrine and take a dump. What do you know? It's a mimic that bites your butt off. So
I don't like any of these ideas. I love them. I just
Yeah.
don't like
That's why you don't play in Dave's games.
Only in Dave's games.
There is no sacred points there. All right, cool.
Nope.
Like I think in
Nothing
general,
is safe.
I want to throw things at you. We're gonna start in the city. I'll verify exactly where I want to start you guys off. I'm thinking a dinner party would be fun.
Yeah, that's
like,
good.
oh, that would be awesome.
Honoring you guys for what you did.
Yeah.
Introducing some of you to the hoity-toity people. I already have some fun things in mind for that, so I think that might be a good place to start. See, David already knows how I'm going to fuck with him first.
Yeah, I hear. I'm like,
I have my trinket from previous game, my shiny magic rock.
Oh,
That's
God.
not magical, but it's yeah.
All right.
My Goliath Slayer.
Cool. I think with that, I think that's a good place to stop for the day. If anyone has further questions, we can do that offline. But thank you all those who joined us in chat. I didn't see any suggestions yet for David's followers, so you're out of luck. I'm just gonna make it up, or he's gonna make it up. We'll figure it out. We'll have some fun with it.
Or we could do a poll even on somewhere on our social media.
I'm currently leaning towards the #1 fan from Flight of the Conchords, so it could go that way. But however you guys want to play it out is fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, throw up a poll and we'll see what. Throw it out into the Discord channel and we'll see what the other.
Yeah, that's a
guys
good idea.
Yeah, I'm absolutely open to any idea for a #1 fan. But yeah, cool.
Thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate you being part of the XP Guild, because I kind of see it as not just Dave and I, it's everybody, these players, you viewers, we're all part of it, and we're just here to provide a fun time for everyone. All right.
Thank y'all.
guys, and goodbye.
Hi everyone.
See
Hi,
y'all
everyone.
tonight.
See you soon.